Back for another view of the ghost town. People who've been watching are going to recognize that I'm approaching the Javits Center, the triage hospital. And I mean, this place has taken on some new relevance since I started this. I've been back in the studio the past couple days. We've had some bad weather days. This stabilizer is almost broken. And my knees and hips get worn out from all this walking around. It's been cold, it's been hot. Today it's back to cold, and the phone was predicting rain, but it appears to be holding out right now. I'm heading back to the Javits Center because it was announced yesterday after that meeting between President Trump and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo that the USNS Comfort, the naval hospital ship, just checking the live there, looking good. The USNS Comfort is leaving New York after 3 weeks, less than 180 patients. The thing that the very generous mainstream news has not been talking about is that was absolutely the most botched mission from the word go that you could possibly imagine. They failed to remind viewers that not only did it only service 180 patients, which seems inconsequential, and as a matter of fact, totally useless given the number of hospitals we've seen and hospital employees we've spoken to who've said that they are not overrun. Within the first couple days, they brought a coronavirus patient to the boat, which was supposed to be preserved for New Yorkers who need medical attention but don't have coronavirus. So, I mean, the question becomes, who is handling that mission so incompetently? Is it Governor Cuomo's incompetence in requesting the thing? Is it the U.S. Navy's incompetence in not being able to keep coronavirus victims off of a non-coronavirus boat? Wonder if that could drive slower. Is it FEMA's incompetence? I mean, how could they have so grossly miscalculated the need? Remember, this is the same governor who, while state attorney general, oversaw the closure of St. Vincent's Medical Center, certainly comparable, if not more, hospital capacity there than the USNS Comfort. I wonder what the cost to the United States taxpayer was to have that USNS Comfort come here, not to mention the Marines, who people saw a week or two ago were so unprofessional, so rude. I forgot that guy's name. Mawson something or other. Masso. Forget. People can go back and look. But, I mean, that guy was a disgrace to the Marines. Unprofessional. Unprepared to answer reasonable questions. I mean, the citizens of New York deserve to know why we're being locked in our apartments and the economy has been shut down. You know, it's interesting to note that in a press conference yesterday, a reporter asked Governor Cuomo if it's people's right to work. I mean, the Constitution says you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you're sitting in your house without any money and no job and your business ruined, worried about the future, I don't know if that's allowing you to pursue happiness. Now, we're here at the Javits. Lincoln Kareem has been doing an excellent job of photographing this place and kind of staking it out. He has observed a huge number of military personnel entering and exiting this building. Doesn't look like a single one of them have been doctors. This person's quickly avoiding talking to me. Excuse me, soldier. Are you a doctor? Excuse me, are you a doctor?
I am.
You are a doctor. Okay, because you're like one of the first doctors we've seen going into this place. There's been so few ambulances. Do you know how many patients have been through?
I don't know an exact number for today, no.
You do look more like a doctor. Most of the people we've seen coming in and out of this place look like they're in their 20s. They don't have any, is there any medical designation on your uniform that lets people know you're a doctor?
No.
There isn't. So just seeing people in camouflage suits, we wouldn't know if doctors are coming or going.
If you have a MedCom patch, yes, but I don't. That's a 44th Med Brigade patch.
That's a Med Brigade patch.
Yeah.
So, but that's
Most
a medical.
People aren't going to know that that's a medical.
But every soldier would have some kind of patch, right, that designates what they're doing. So people who know about the military can figure out what those patches do. And how's it going in there? Are there a lot of patients coming in?
There are.
How many? Do we know? Any way
I
to?
don't know an exact number, but we've got a good number.
And what about the ship? The naval ship is leaving now.
That's a separate operation from us, so I don't have anything because I'm not Navy, I'm Army.
Right. It seems pretty badly coordinated. Is that the governor's fault or FEMA's fault or the president's fault? Who did all this without coordination between the branches of the military, the city?
Well, no, it's just that's a separate thing. This is being run here. The Javits Convention Center is separate from the Comfort ship. They're two separate operations.
Right.
We're not.
Of course. And is this going to stay operational even though the governor says we no longer need the ship?
That I don't know.
You don't know. All right. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Have a nice day.
You too.
All right. Well, that was good information there. So I was watching Lincoln Kareem's videos, and I just found it strange that it just didn't look like anybody going in there was a doctor. Are you guys doctors? Do you know how many medical people are here versus other Army personnel?
No, I do not.
Seems like a lot more Army personnel who aren't medical.
I can't answer any.
Okay, that's fine. That's a good answer. So now they've prepared these guys to say they don't care to answer any questions at this time. That's a fair answer. So my presumption was we haven't seen anybody who looks like a doctor. Now that woman that I spoke to, she looked like she was in her 40s or 50s. And obviously we know that doctors require years of training. So somebody older like that seems more likely to be a doctor than somebody in their 20s. Are you a doctor?
No, I'm not.
Are you medical staff at all?
I am, yeah.
So do you know how many patients have been through here?
No, I'm not sure.
What do you think about the Navy ship leaving?
I don't really have any comment about that. I don't have much information on it, so.
Seems like a huge miscalculation to have this and the Navy ship in so much lower need. Did you know that Governor Cuomo was the state attorney general when St. Vincent's Hospital closed?
No, I don't have any information on that.
Well, that is true. That was a fact. He allowed that to close and says that they knew there was going to be a pandemic but did nothing to increase hospital capacity in the 10 years since it closed. Does that surprise you?
I don't have any information on that. I'm
All right,
sorry.
thanks. All right, so there are medical personnel coming in here. Do you guys have any idea how many patients have been through this hospital?
I don't know.
Are you a doctor?
No.
Uh-huh. Neither of you. All right, thanks. What is Operation Gotham 2020? Yeah, they don't want to really talk very much. We do have some ambulances here today. I mean, it's interesting to note that Lincoln Kareem was saying he hadn't seen a single ambulance coming or going from the place. So certainly if they wanted us to think that he was incorrect, they might station some empty ambulances here and have him just sitting there. There's a lot of Army people coming to this thing. Excuse me, are you a doctor?
Please don't record me though.
Sorry?
Please don't record me though.
Okay, well, it is my right to record you if you're in public. And it's your right to walk away. He's not a doctor. Let's ask this guy if he's a doctor. These guys like to deny people their rights. Are you a doctor? Can you tell me what Operation Gotham 2020 is? I don't know. Do these people seem like they're here to protect our rights and protect the Constitution, or do they seem like they're here to not answer questions? There's a lot of people getting takeout lunch. Are you guys doctors? None of you are doctors? Can you tell me what Operation Gotham 2020 is?
Nope.
Can't tell me. Okay. Are you a doctor, sir? Are you a doctor? Can you tell me what Operation Gotham 2020 is?
Cannot. Sorry, sir.
All right. Yeah, none of these guys are going to tell us. That's fine. We understand. I actually got to speed this up because I want to get to the boat and I got to get back. Are you a doctor?
No, sir.
How come there's so few doctors at this medical facility? It seems more like an Army base. What can you tell me about Operation Gotham 2020?
I can't really tell you what it is, sir.
So you've been instructed not to tell the public what it is?
You can contact.
Yeah, they told me that, and those guys wouldn't give me any answers. Seems like a blow-off. Okay, thanks. No, they don't want to talk about it. Understandable, I guess. Mobile Field Exchange. We go where you go, and then we tell you, don't film me, and I don't want to talk to you. That's cool. So, yeah, I've slowed down a bit on some of the walkabouts the past few days, just because I've had some other stuff I've been looking into. Takes time, on the phone, and taking care of stuff back at the office. People have seen a lot of the shows have come under attack. I've been working to fortify the system there. There's been a lot of new viewers coming to Crowdsource the Truth. I want to thank everybody who's joining us. I want to remind everybody that it is really important to become a sponsor of the show. If you watch it and enjoy it, that's the only way to make sure that it keeps going. I mean, this is my job. I can't do this if I don't have the sponsorship of the viewers, and there are many generous sponsors. I got to thank George Webb's brother. Yeah, he's basically the most epic troll in history. He's been after me for, 3 years. I didn't know who the guy was until he started making these bizarre videos about me, threatening me and making false claims of all kinds. But now he's taken to posting some of his articles and things, when I question people like Andrew Cuomo. He doesn't want me to do that. He thinks that's bad. He's protecting Andrew Cuomo. He seems to support the same agenda as Andrew Cuomo. I wonder what that is. Andrew Cuomo is the Democratic governor of New York who has made so many contradictions of himself and other people, including medical professionals like Colleen Smith, who also has contradicted herself. When she first came on the scene in the New York Times, she was involved in that multimedia presentation there at Elmhurst Hospital that was showing us her in the ICU, or I guess it was the ICU. She was very concerned over the lack of ventilators, and it's important for people to know that the CEO of the New York Times is the former Director General of the BBC. Now, for the entire time that I've known David Hawkins, my co-host on David Hawkins' Discovery CSI, that's a sponsor-exclusive show that's on every Friday, David's been talking about how the BBC is essentially a tool of British intelligence. Everybody knows it's operated by the British government, and it's paid for by a television tax that every British citizen must pay. So it's a very well-funded operation. And I mean, for a long, long time, it was sort of all you could see on television in England. They had, BBC One and BBC Two. And I remember the first time I went to England, I was kind of a young kid. It was for a family wedding. And there was like a big deal being made because they were introducing a fourth channel or a third channel. And it was laughable at the time. Now, of course, they have cable TV and Sky, whatever. I don't know, is Murdoch involved with that? I think he has Sky News or something, or News International. He has News Corp here in the United States. We've spoken about that quite a bit. News Corp owns Fox News, it owns the Wall Street Journal, it owns the New York Post. There's been a lot of weird reporting in the New York Post, particularly about Jeffrey Epstein, In-N-Out Burger, weird stuff. If people didn't get a chance to see Charles Ortella's Closing In yesterday, that was a fantastic episode. We had author Melissa Cronin on. She's an expert on Jeffrey Epstein and all the crazy stuff he's been up to. She's just written a book about Peter Nygaard, who's a friend of Epstein's and a similar rapist weirdo who coincidentally flies the same exact extremely rare, extremely old Boeing 727 model aircraft. This is a super interesting point because when it first came up that Jeffrey Epstein was flying a 727, I found that odd because it's the least common Boeing jet available. It's a tri-jet, so it's more difficult to service, and if it's the least common jet, there's going to be less mechanics around. Rich dudes can buy used 737s all day and night. That's the most common aircraft ever made, commercial jet. So why wouldn't you just get that if you wanted a used aircraft? And why would you fly a 50-year-old one? Jeffrey Epstein's was manufactured in 1969. Peter Nygaard's was in 1970. The unique feature of this aircraft, well, there's two. One is a rear hatch that can be opened in flight if the plane descends to a low enough altitude that it can depressurize, which is below 15,000 feet. Still pretty high, but low enough that you could depressurize. The other notable characteristic of the jet is that it is extremely stable at low speed flight. So that would also help you in terms of slowing down, descending, and dropping stuff out of it. The question is, what would you drop out of it? Well, I don't know. Could be anything. Could be drugs, could be bombs, could be people, living or dead. We know that Jeffrey Epstein had that weirdo island with a temple on it that I don't think is really well understood, but it had a lot of strange symbols, and some people have speculated that perhaps there's a religious aspect to some of the things that Jeffrey Epstein does. Obviously his name and his family descent, he's Jewish, but people convert from one religion to another or practice their religion in unique ways. The question has been posed that what if Jeffrey Epstein and certain people he's associated with are involved in the Aleister Crowley religion, Thelema. This is a pretty extreme religion. Involves human sacrifice, sex, magic, rituals. We know that Epstein was involved in all kinds of bizarre sex stuff on More Pain, Mike Moore's sponsor-exclusive show on Tuesday nights. We interviewed several months ago an individual who alleges that he was raped as a young boy by Bill Clinton. People can get onto patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and just search More Pain episodes and see that guy's testimony. You know, he was brought to the FBI. FBI took his statement, but hasn't done anything. This individual claimed he was raped on a yacht. He's in his 20s now. He says it took place when he was, 8 or 9 years old. And that he witnessed children being killed, their blood being drawn. So, human sacrifice and all that stuff, it could happen. And if you were a super billionaire or half a billionaire and you had a jet with a door on the back of it, might you decorate up the interior of the jet to have some kind of weird religious kill room in it and, do your sacrifices, video record the people witnessing it, and then chuck the body out the back? Even if there is no religious aspect, certainly having someone on that jet be a witness to murder, if a former president were there, you're creating a pretty interesting entrapment scenario, because if you're, some comedian or actor or something, and you start saying, Bill Clinton did this or that, there's a long history of people not believing accusers of Bill Clinton and the accusers' lives being ruined. Mike Moore also had a really good interview, speaking of lives being ruined. Mike Moore had a really good interview with Dr. Judy Mikovits where she spoke about Anthony Fauci ruining her life after she revealed that a substrate they were growing research material for an HIV vaccine on itself contained a virus that was causing cancer in the people who received the vaccine. Now there's a lot of social engineers and social media who are pressing us toward this vaccine agenda. Look at this thing. Never seen that vehicle before. MRTU-1. Someone will know what that's all about. But we're approaching the Navy ship. Hopefully there will be some Marines there with manners. That's a cute dog right there. Looks like a puppy. Yeah, so, right, George Webb's brother, he began posting a lot of tweets about me this morning. He's got some article claiming I'm anti-vax. People who watch the show know that's not true. I recognize the importance of vaccinating populations against dangerous and deadly diseases. I am anti-corporations lobbying government officials to change laws in favor of their profits at the expense of our safety. I think a vaccine is a fine idea as long as it's properly developed by people who aren't accused of scientific fraud, and it's tested and shown to be safe. I don't like the idea of rushing a vaccine out, particularly when somebody who's supposed to be a medical doctor is poo-pooing the notion of a clinical trial of hydroxychloroquine. That's what I understood Anthony Fauci to be doing in the first days that was suggested. He did not seem enthusiastic about a treatment for COVID-19. He was driving hard to the hoop for a vaccine. And Bill Gates has been speaking a lot about the need to show who's been vaccinated. They don't talk about who's immune. They talk about who's been inoculated. See, that's different. Locking everybody in their house for 2 months and deliberately destroying the economy based on a totally incorrect calculation that's been made by people who've been accused of scientific fraud and are engaged in corruption and seem to have severe conflicts of interest in terms of where their money comes from. I'm talking about Bill Gates. I don't like the idea of them making public policy. I like the idea of them being investigated for fraud. Mike Moore presented documents from, it was, I guess, a court case or some sort of military proceeding. People should go to truepundit.com and follow up to get the exact details on Mike Moore's reporting. But this was documentation from the Department of the Air Force about charges that were brought against Robert Redfield, the doctor who is in charge of the CDC. He was directly accused of falsifying research and evidence involved in the development of an HIV vaccine. And last week on Dr. Corsi's RX for America, Dr. Corsi is not a medical doctor. That was a pun when we created that title. We might need to change it now. I don't want to mislead anyone. Dr. Corsi is a PhD in political science, not a medical doctor. None of his advice is intended to diagnose, cure, or treat a disease. And it's not medical advice, but Dr. Corsi did dig into that Indian research paper that found uncanny similarities in these 4 inserts of a glycoprotein from the HIV-1 virus. And there is a patent, which Dr. Fauci is one of the inventors of this technique, I believe. I've got some calls into other doctors to help us understand the patent, but it's talking about antagonists of this glycoprotein in HIV-1. And then here's this Indian research paper that says those exact same glycoproteins are appearing in COVID-19. Now, Dr. Corsi's interpretation was that the HIV component, here's Cardinal Health leaving the boat area. Cardinal Health sounds like maybe a medical supply company. But Dr. Corsi took those inserted HIV components to be potentially put in there to attack the immune system, making a standard coronavirus perhaps very deadly. If your immune system were compromised by some hybrid virus, perhaps a coronavirus, which, they're all around coronaviruses. COVID-19 is like a new flavor that's extra dangerous, perhaps because of this glycoprotein. But the paper was withdrawn, and what I'm hearing is that happened because of political and economic pressure that was put on the publisher and the people that publish these types of things. The Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, gives out so much money and so many grants to so many different scientists. If they want to make something happen, they've got a lot of ways to influence people. And Dr. Judy Mikovits tells the story of Anthony Fauci directly disrupting her research. Here's these Marines again. Because she found this virus. How you guys doing? Is there anybody here who can talk to me about the ship leaving?
I have to be in contact. Please don't film.
Why? Is it against the law?
No, you can film, sir. I can get in contact with somebody.
Yeah, if there's a commanding officer around, I'd love to speak to him, because I think the people of New York, is the boat still here or is it left already?
Oh, the boat's still here.
Still here.
Yes.
Do you know when it's leaving?
I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, if there's a commanding officer I could speak to, I would appreciate
No
that.
problem. Just 1 sec, sir.
Thanks. Doesn't seem to be a consensus in terms of what the procedure is over here. And I mean, perhaps that's part of what led to an unnecessary ship coming here. See, the thing that's so interesting about this is that Andrew Cuomo sees this as, oh, we had these huge numbers predicted, and the fact that we brought this ship and built this hospital, the Javits Center, and locked everybody at home, well, that conclusively proves that everything they did worked. He hasn't even explored the other possible explanation, which is that the initial projection was totally wrong, and all he's done is destroy the economy and send money to people like that, whoever operates that truck delivering medical supplies to this boat. I think there's a lot of ways they could have mitigated this, saved resources, saved taxpayer money, let people go to work. So I don't know, we'll see how long it takes for somebody to come over here. Maybe it'll be that guy who we spoke to last time. We'll see how he responds this time. Let's see if we're still live and if there's any interesting comments. Got half an hour. We're going to have a really great guest coming on at 2, so I want to make sure I'm back in time for that. We've got Diana West talking about Robert De Niro having dinner with Barack Obama and Tim Cook. Did people know about that? I didn't hear too much about that. People are saying they're hateful of the citizenry. Not all of them. The guy who told me it was okay to film, he was on the right track. It's my right to film. Unless they say that this is some kind of special something where you're not allowed to film. This is interesting here. It says, no weapons are allowed in this facility by civilian personnel. Entering this facility is deemed valid consent to screening or inspection. Failure to consent to inspection or screening will result in denial or revocation of authorization to enter. Oh yeah, this sign is reminding me. There are a couple of other signs I saw on my walk over here. This social distancing. Oh no, sorry, that was from the other day when I was up by Central Park with Charles Ortel. They won't let you in without a mask. This one is from a Duane Reade pharmacy. The new policy is you're not even allowed inside. So, I mean, you know, we're seeing some pretty restrictive policies being enacted. While we're waiting, we'll take a look at this video. I shot this on the walk over here, and it shows, I think I counted 9 ambulances waiting over there. Sir, you're with FEMA, right? You're with FEMA, aren't you? No? Are you with the Navy?
Huh?
Are you with the Navy?
I'm just here. I work here.
You work here?
Yeah.
So what do you? I'm doing well. What do you think about the Navy ship leaving after serving so few patients?
Sorry, I'm just an employee on the pier. I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't know that the ship is leaving?
I know it's here. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. So that guy didn't hear the news that the ship is leaving. Less than 180 patients went onto this ship. It was intended for New Yorkers who need surgery and medical attention but don't have coronavirus. And very early in its deployment, coronavirus patients were brought on. They've got an ambulance coming out. Do they save this for when I arrive with a camera and just bring it out when that happens? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's legit. But we'll wait here for a little while and see if somebody can come out and talk to me. I mean, I think they're going to give us kind of the runaround. But this definitely satisfies the people who would say that they've been here and haven't seen any ambulances. I didn't time this that well, but it's hard to get these days timed out. It's a lot of work to come up here and try to arrive on time and make it back in time for other shows and other guests. But yeah, that little video there of the ambulances showed, I think, 9 ambulances parked at that FDNY depot, and I don't know, did they call off those 250 ambulances that they're bringing here? Some people keep talking about a deadly second wave. Dr. Tedros, the diabolical Dr. Tedros, who is the Director General of the WHO. If people didn't see the video with John Martin revealing some of the horrendous things Dr. Tedros has done, you should check that out. It's interesting that George Webb's brother wants to counter my message when I'm trying to reveal corruption, maybe even criminality on the part of the CDC, the WHO. Why is he holding water for them? Why is he supporting their agenda? He made an article claiming that I'm an anti-vaxxer. That's not true. I've had a lot of vaccines, and I support the idea of safe vaccines. I don't like the 1986 Vaccine Injury Act. I've spoken to my friend Del Bigtree several times about that. Look at this. They've put a mesh netting in front of this so you can't see in. Doesn't seem like they want a lot of transparency over here. They didn't have somebody really standing at the ready to command those guys, and they don't seem too unified on what their orders are. One of them said don't film. The other said you can film. You with the Navy, sir?
Yes.
What do you think about the boat leaving after only 3 weeks? Got a lot of time on your hands if you got jogging in the middle of the day rather than tending to patients. I mean, you know, I think taxpayers should be concerned about governors and presidents and congresspeople and the Navy wasting our money, forcing us to stay in our apartments, telling us that we can't ask them any questions about what's going on here, being rude the last time I was here. Lincoln Kareem is the guy who's been riding around on his bike. He's got a YouTube channel of the same name. He's been staking out these locations, really just, you know, filming them for an hour or two at a time. Any word? Anybody?
Where's that?
Anybody available to speak?
We're trying to get a hold of somebody right now.
How long you think it'll take?
I'm not sure, so I can contact them again and see how long it takes.
Is there a phone number I can call to get in touch with somebody who's in charge of this?
I think so.
How-
I'm going to get in contact now.
Maybe the phone number would be better and I could call. That way I don't have to wait. Could you find the phone number? Thanks. That guy's helpful. There we go. Let's check the comments again. Oh, actually, here. I took some other video on the walk up. Let's take a look at this. I was speaking to some NYPD traffic officers. How come it's only NYPD traffic that's out? There's virtually no regular NYPD, all traffic cops. Is NYPD stood down?
I don't want to say anything.
You don't want to say anything, but you may know something. Thanks.
You want to know about
No problem. How come it's only NYPD traffic around? Has the regular NYPD been stood down?
Yeah, it's everybody working.
Say again?
What are you saying? I don't understand.
How come I only see NYPD traffic officers, no regular NYPD beat cops walking around? Has the NYPD been stood down?
Yeah, big cops is working.
Not that many.
No, I think working everywhere. Your working is to take the car and everywhere around, everywhere.
Okay. They check the car and so I don't know. He says, one guy seemed to think perhaps they were stood down, but didn't really seem to know what he was talking about. None of them really did. Here come these Army guys again. Let's see what they say. Oh no, maybe not. They look like they're just sort of standing over there. I mean, again, it's real easy for them to wait me out and sort of tell me nothing. We got the cops over here. No phone number? But they don't have a phone number that I could call? No. And on the way, what do you think? How long? All right, let's see who it is that's coming over to talk to me. I hope I can get a taxi back in time. I don't want to keep Diana West waiting. She's going to be talking to us about Robert De Niro, Barack Obama, and Tim Cook having dinner together. Robert De Niro, obviously very vocal and well-known actor who, okay, here we go. We got somebody coming over. Let's see who we got. Good, how are you? I was just wondering if we could talk a bit about the ship leaving so soon after getting here.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to forward you to our public affairs officer, the Naval public affairs officer. He's going to be able to handle any questions that you have.
How do I reach that person?
Do you want a phone number?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. His name is Lieutenant Commander Sheehan. He's the Navy public affairs officer here. Actually, you know what? Can I just give you an email? I don't know this phone number.
Sure.
All right. It's michael.j.sheehan@navy.mil.
And that's publicly posted somewhere on the Navy website, right? He's the public information officer, so Obviously,
I mean,
people
I'm
are
not
encouraged.
sure
The public
whether
is encouraged to contact him if they have questions, I presume.
I'm not sure about any of those questions, but
Okay.
pretty much if you need to contact him for any type of questions that you have, he's more than capable of fielding those questions.
Thank you for your
Yep.
help.
Yeah, of course.
Take care, and thanks for what you're doing over here.
Thank you for choosing.
That's a polite person who answered the question politely to the best of his ability. So now we can contact that guy and ask him questions like, who is responsible for the decision for that boat to come here, and how could they make such a decision on such poor information? And how can they conclude from what has happened that what they did was the right decision? I'm very concerned about Andrew Cuomo's response to all this. Shepard Ambellis published a story on IntelliHub.com where he arrived at the conclusion that the ship leaving was an indication that the government or the Navy or somebody has knowledge that a meteor is going to strike the Earth. I don't know that I agree with that conclusion. I think what's happening is there is an entity behind this viral outbreak. We've been looking at such a broad range of evidence that causes me to disbelieve this notion that it was a natural viral mutation from a bat into some soup, into a Chinese girl eating the soup, and then everybody got sick. Is it Dr. Kaufman who said there's some principle? He's an MD, I believe. I want to try to reach Dr. Kaufman. He's been doing some really interesting videos. It's amazing to me how MDs who say things that make sense are being ignored, and then MDs who say things that are contradictory or don't make sense or drive you right towards the conclusion that you got to get a vaccine, they're being boosted in social media. Cameron Kyle Seidel, he was talking about ventilators, that there's a false medical paradigm. 3 MDs that I spoke to said what he was saying was nonsense, dumb, ridiculous. Those were the adjectives they used to describe his conclusions. I can't really say. It's a field I don't have experience in. I can only ask other medical doctors. And it's weird to me that Cameron Kyle Seidel knows Colleen Smith. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. So Colleen Smith comes out in this big multimedia piece in the New York Times that I suspect Mark Thompson, the New York Times CEO, former Director General of the BBC, which commands us to ausculta, listen and obey. That doesn't include questioning. That doesn't include leaving your apartment to look at things and try to figure out what's going on. They just want you to shut up, stay home, and listen and obey. It's kind of the same thing that George Webb's brother wants you to do. See, the other thing that got George Webb's brother really upset is that I had reposted that video that demonstrates how incredibly unprofessional and frankly stupid Paul Cottrell is. You know, he claims to be a doctor. I've never heard him make a disclaimer stating that he's not giving medical advice, that he's not an MD. I believe he's misleading people by saying he's a doctor and speaking on these medical topics without a disclaimer. I think that's very irresponsible. I think cursing me out in the way that he did and behaving the way that he did was also very irresponsible and unprofessional. And I tried to post that video so that people could watch it and make their own minds up about it. People can go on to Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at CSTheTruth. I don't often mention that on the videos, but that's a good way to keep up with what's going on because, you know, George's brother and their team of friends, they're constantly trying to do things to jam me up, to strike the videos. You know, I got an email from some unknown person just as I was leaving the apartment to make this video, where this person who I don't know has the nerve to tell me that he finds it off-putting that I've created a sponsor-exclusive video channel that people can watch content that you won't see anywhere else by becoming sponsors at subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. It's only $2 a month, which is, you know, I don't know why that guy doesn't send emails to the New York Times and complain that they're charging for the newspaper. Why doesn't he want that to be free? Why doesn't he write letters to CNN and tell them to stop taking advertising? I've tried to, you know, clarify that the purpose of this business model is to eliminate corporate sponsors from the business of gathering and disseminating news. And I've done that because I believe with the legacy model, like the one that supports the New York Post and the New York Times and CNN and MSNBC and Fox and all these other things, the problem you've got is that, basically exactly what Robert Kennedy Jr. described to us on Michael Moore's Thomas Paine podcast, even though Robert Kennedy Jr. was childhood friends with Roger Ailes, the CEO of Fox News. Roger straight out told RFK Jr., you can't come on Fox and talk about vaccine injuries and cover-ups by the pharmaceutical industry because 70% of their revenue comes from the pharmaceutical industry, so it's not in their financial interest to report on that stuff. Causes me to wonder what else is not in their financial interest to report on. So this person who sent me the email this morning saying that he or she finds it off-putting that I would create a subscription video service where people can get even more content than the free content that I put out on YouTube, that person either is very narrow-minded and selfish, or perhaps they're a social engineer who's trying to make me feel bad about trying to earn a living. It takes a lot of time and effort. It takes a lot of money to maintain this equipment. It's constantly breaking and being replaced. And, if that person is watching right now, the response is, I don't care if you find it off-putting. As a matter of fact, be put off and go ahead and F right off, because I don't need you watching and I have no obligation to work all day, 6-7 days a week for somebody who wants to watch my content but doesn't think it deserves sponsorship of $2 a month. So, what is that? That's 50 cents a week? 7 cents a day? I don't know. I appreciate people who can't afford that, and that's why I put so much free content on YouTube. But someone who's instructing me to terminate the sponsored channel is either doing that because they want this service to go away, or they are truly ignorant. Because if it weren't for the generous Patreon and Subscribe Star sponsors, I would have stopped doing this 2 years ago, and I would have had to find something else to do, and none of these news reports would have come out over the past 2 months that we've been following all this stuff. So now I'm in the zone where I do have to get back to the apartment rather quickly to be on time for Diana West's show about Robert De Niro having dinner with Tim Cook and Barack Obama. Right, that brings me back to what I was going to say. So before we leave for now, Barack Obama, I think people need to really educate themselves about the Weather Underground. And I'm not talking about the app that tells you when it's going to rain. I'm talking about the Students for Democratic Society, Students for Democratic Socialism. What did it stand for? SDS. It evolved into the Weather Underground. That was Bernardine Dohrn and Bill Ayers' radical Marxist, anti-war, anti-government organization in the 1960s that bombed several buildings, including the NYPD, I believe, headquarters, a ladies' washroom at the Pentagon or the Capitol. They bombed the Pentagon and the Capitol. They bombed a lot of things. They maimed people. They killed people. They were ultimately arrested, but didn't go to jail because, surprise, surprise, the FBI mishandled the evidence. That's so weird. Seems like they almost never do that. Oh, wait a minute, they always do that. So anyway, Bernardine Dohrn didn't go to jail. She went on to work at a law firm called Sidley Austin, where Barack Obama and Michelle Obama both worked. It's interesting. Bernardine Dohrn also went to the University of Chicago, and she mentored Barack and Michelle Obama at the Sidley Austin Chicago law firm. Earlier, maybe it was last week, I went over to one of the Sidley Austin offices in New York and noticed that there was an unusual sculpture in front of it that looks remarkably similar to the logo for In-N-Out Burger. Mouthy Buddha is the creator of Pedogate 2020. I've been mistakenly referring to it as Pizzagate 2020, and I apologize to people who might not have been able to locate it because of that error. But Pedogate 2020, you filming me? I think that person was filming. It's okay, I don't mind, but they were trying to be coy about it and not hiding it very well. It's their right, I'm in public, you can film me. Somebody sent me an email. They were filming me from their apartment or their office, just walking around in Times Square. It was cool. Yeah, Pedogate 2020. That's an amazingly well done documentary, and it's reemerged on BitChute. People can see Pedogate 2020 on BitChute, and that contains some explosive information, new evidence about Gordy's pickle jar, new evidence about Instagram posts that include In-N-Out Burger imagery. Now, this is not proof of anything. This does not implicate Gordy's pickle jar or In-N-Out Burger in anything, but it is evidence, and it is new, and it is interesting, and it is worth looking at. And when we think about Sidley Austin, and we think about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and Bernadine Dorn and the University of Chicago, it's just interesting to note that Dr. Colleen Smith also went to University of Chicago, and she went there at a time when Michelle Obama was the Associate Dean of Students. I don't know, I seem to recall interacting with deans of students at NYU when I was there. If somebody asked me, what was that woman's name? Dean Cheryl something. If somebody asked me, hey, did you ever meet this person? If I could remember her name, I might say maybe, I think it was the dean of NYU. So I asked Dr. Colleen Smith if she ever met or interacted with Michelle Obama or Bernadine Dorn. She refused to answer. I asked her what the hospital's policy was on allowing doctors who are coronavirus COVID-19 positive to continue working with patients. She refused to answer. I asked the official media office for the hospital if they had enough ventilators or not, what their policy was on allowing doctors to record patients in the ICU, even if it's just their feet, and to put out statements to the New York Times that directly contradict the official word of the hospital. They gave me the runaround. They told me to talk to that woman, Ms. Butler. She told me to email the questions 2 days later. I called her. She said she got them, but she wasn't the right person to send them to, and I should send them to somebody else. Forwarded them, Chris Miller, I think the guy's name was, forwarded to him, no response. So, I don't understand what the purpose of these public information offices are if they don't give the public information. And we remember that Ms. Butler's title at the Elmhurst Hospital was brand storyteller. So now that we've got some perspective on this event, we're a couple weeks, there were all these breathless people telling us we were going to have hundreds of thousands of deaths based on faulty scientific evidence brought forward by scientists who've been accused by the government and the military of fraud. And then when we take information from those same scientists and come to a conclusion that appears to have not gone the way they predicted, the presumption is that everything that they recommended worked, rather than their initial calculations were totally wrong, which seems more likely to me. But back to the University of Chicago, there's another component to this. There's a city councilman, this guy here by the name of Brad Lander, right? So this is the guy who said, if somebody dies of cancer while this is going on, they might have been saved, so technically they're dying of COVID-19, so we can list that as a COVID-19 death and pump up the numbers. That sounds like manipulating public health policy to achieve a political goal. That sounds like the same kind of stuff that Dr. Tedros does. Guess where this guy went to college? Look at that, University of Chicago. So I wonder if he ever met or interacted with Dr. Colleen Smith, who works at a public hospital here in New York City. I wonder if he ever met and interacted with Bernadine Dorn, Michelle Obama. What is this guy's agenda? His wife is the vice president of Planned Parenthood. Now again, that doesn't implicate her in anything. It's just an interesting fact. So I don't know. This is a guy who is in a position where he can reclassify certain types of deaths or medical events to change public policy. Are people aware that that's what Dr. Tedros did? He said they're not having a cholera outbreak in this region of Ethiopia. They're having acute watery diarrhea syndrome, and by changing it, the people suffering from that no longer qualified for UN aid. Children died, They didn't receive food. They didn't receive medicine. So the question is Mr. Lander doing something similar? Is this a tactic? Is this a weather underground plan to destroy the government and replace it with a democratic socialist system that these people would control? We're all in our houses. Many people have lost their jobs, lost their businesses. They've got essentially the whole country waiting around for this stimulus check. They've converted us essentially into socialists overnight. It's a very, very dangerous situation, and I've been concerned about that from the beginning. Now I'm a bit concerned about getting back in time for Diana's show, so I'm going to end the stream here. I don't know if I can get a taxi, but if people have found this information interesting, informative, helpful, entertaining, if you've been watching and you think it's worth your time, I think it's worth, what did we decide, 7 cents a day or something? Become a sponsor. Go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. In addition to supporting independent news that is not unduly influenced by large corporate sponsors or outside entities, you're going to get access to a huge and growing library of sponsor-exclusive content. So it's a great way to educate yourself about some of these things that aren't being spoken about in the mainstream news and form your own opinions about this stuff. I'm going to have to walk a little closer to Midtown there to find out what's going on. Let's see what these guys say. Hey, can you guys tell me what Operation Gotham 2020 is? Are either of you guys doctors? Not doctors, or can't tell me what 2020 is? Not doctors. A lot of non-doctors going into that thing. It's interesting. So here's NYPD traffic, and also a regular NYPD right there. Can I cross? All right, so I think that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please sponsor the show. Help me show these social engineers that they can't stop this message. It's just really strange to me that George Webb is supporting Paul Cottrell, who's not a doctor and who's driving panic, and George Webb's brother, who claims to hate George Webb, who's told us about a family history of schizophrenia, has told us, well, people can go back and read it if they want, but these are his words. I don't know if they're true or not. But he gets real upset when I try to counteract Paul Cottrell's irresponsible message, and he gets real upset when I try to hold Andrew Cuomo accountable for what are obviously terrible decisions. So we're back at that spot where weeks ago I encountered the NYPD special whatever they were. You know, we've got this subway stop here for the 7th Avenue line. Oh no, sorry, it was over there. Yeah, so can people see from here the butterfly in that plaza? Yeah, there are the wings. Some people have said that that thing is an MK Ultra butterfly. Wasn't MK Ultra going on at Harvard? Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, he hated psychologists, and they had him on all kinds of drugs, trying to do weird stuff with him. And now we got this guy Charles Lieber, who was arrested. He was an expert in nanotechnology, trying to develop little microscopic things that can go inside your cell and do who knows what. Did anybody notice when I was speaking to Paul Cottrell how uneasy he got when the subject of Paul Lieber came up? He got real nervous. And he cut me off before he answered my last question. Hey, here's something that I didn't see the last time we were here. What is this? Oh, Bishop is going to be interested to see that. What is that? What do we got there? Some weird stuff over here. All right, take it easy, everybody. I got to hustle back to the place. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.